How you been?
I've been great, just still working and still playing a lot of APBA baseball and football. So
Good deal. Good deal. Well, yeah. Well, it occurred to me when I saw the interviewed Greg, and obviously got a bookend. You're the 1-2 punch finally in the Hall of Fame here, the football guys. So the two belong in there. So, I thought, well, we should probably get some things that we talked about before on the record, and move forward because with that innovations thread you started, it's getting a lot of traction. So that's awesome.
well, and it's interesting too, because the next step of that innovations thread is I'm actually putting together my entire game, and I'm going to make it available to anybody out there that wants it. Because I have created my own boards, my own rules. I use the game company's cards, but everything else is my own. Either my own invention or great ideas I've stolen from somebody else. But I'm packaging them all together, and I should have it ready in the next week to be able to send out. And I think anybody that gets it, if they get one or two good ideas out of it, then I feel like that's time well spent. So we'll see.
Absolutely. That perfect. I'd say I get it's kind of like a vibe. It's like, boy, that would be a great idea. And you had the great idea. That's awesome. That's great. So I think that serves as a fair introduction there. Let's start with the news. Don't bury the lead. But I did want to go back really quickly. Our article, when we interviewed you the first time, that was the date line here is October 18th of 2012. And so for those who might not know Ray, for those who are maybe new to the game of APBA or getting back into football, if I may, I just wanted to give a brief rundown of Ray's APBA life. Ray is on APBA Hall of Famer, class of 2016, with Greg Barath, the great replayer. So, Mr. Dunlap, we can fact check here while we're going along, but you acquired your first football game in 1966 with the 1965 season cards we wrote. You're a native of Rochester. You played quarterback for St. John Fisher College, earned a bachelor's in history in 1976, and moved to Florida to earn your MBA at the University of South Florida in 1980, which is when you got a call from Mike Haley of the APBA Journal. You started writing for the Journal. And you eventually replaced Mr. Haley at the urging of fellow Hall of Famer Howard Alskog, the great savior of the APBA Journal and football guru of the 80s. And you then went on to form the Suncoast Football League, writing your own boards, as you say, and created a matchup deck. And the league is still in existence. So since 1979, although I think they're using Action PC now. But is that all a fair introduction there for you?
It is, absolutely. The only thing you left out was I was the head statistician of the Tampa Bay Bucks for 5 years.
That's
so that
right.
was kind of cool too.
And what years were those?
I think we started that in 1983, and it went through 1987. So 83, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Which one of the cool things was the Super Bowl came to Tampa in 84. That was the Super Bowl between the Raiders and the Redskins, where Marcus Allen had that 60-something yard reverse run touchdown. And we got to work at the game. So not only did I get to go to a Super Bowl, I got paid to go to a Super Bowl. So that's kind of cool.
Wow, yeah, that's rare. Usually you pay pretty well to go to the bowl. And speaking of that 83 set, if you ever talk to Rogue Board, don't ever get them started on that 83, those Riggins and Marcus Allen cards. But and those are still that's the creamsicle uniform era. Was Doug Williams still there at the time? Doug
Williams was still there quarterbacking at the time. We had DeBerg came in shortly after that. So we worked through the Williams and DeBerg era. Yeah.
Oh, right. That's right. Steve DeBerg, the great. Oh, and speaking of Steve DeBerg, he was, of course, the quarterback for the Niners in 1979 when your league started. And one of the great pieces of Suncoast Football League lore is that Joe Montana was never drafted. He's the biggest name who was never drafted, as I recall.
He was, because we had a rule that if you were eligible to be drafted, you had to be taken in the round you were actually taken in or earlier. And if you were eligible and you didn't get taken, you became ineligible forever. And DeBert had just set a record for the 49ers for most attempts and most completions. And Montana, third round pick out of Notre Dame, hardly played. And so we collectively thought we didn't want to waste a third round pick on a guy that might not make it. So Joe Montana never played it down in the Suncoast Football League.
Mm-hmm. That's a great story. One thing I really wanted to talk about, a couple of things here. And you can see behind us, we have the shot reminiscent of your presentation up in Canton in 2013 here, how to build a league for life. But I really wanted to talk more about the statistical accuracy. Now, for the Suncoast League, and I believe for your subsequent, the game that you're packaging here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you throw out the old boards, you rewrote boards. One of the key issues with the old boards was if you were in the B index, your running backs got a 15, you're facing a defense calling that light line, that pass defense, and you get that 25-yard run repeatedly, things like that, or the Bart Starr incident where he fell on the ball and he got the 73-yard touchdown return on the penalty, something like that. So my question is that when you did that whole board reconstruction, usually, and we were just talking to Steve Stein of Steve's Card Computer, people talk about the cards, manipulating the cards and getting that game engine baked into the cards. But how do you work from the boards into the cards? What is the kind of slide rule calculation you're doing there?
So you have to start with the cards themselves. So when you're looking at somebody's running card and he played for a team and he averaged 4.4 yards a carry, you want to make sure that his card statistically will recreate a 4.4 yard carry. So you have to make certain assumptions. How many times are you going to be in this zone on the game boards? What percentage of time are you going to be in that, goal line? And you start with those assumptions. You're absolutely right about the 25-yard gain on Dice Roll Results 15, because there were way too many big gains. And still to this day, in my opinion, the APBA boards have way too many big gains. And so correspondingly, they have to put in a lot of big losses. They ultimately get to the right number, but they do it in a way that I don't think recreates the football experience as well as I'd like it. So my boards have shorter big gains, and consequently, they don't have the huge losses. Now, we still have the opportunity for breakaways, and we still have the opportunity for a big loss, but it's going to be a little bit more random, and statistically, it still works out. So it's a lot of work to go through all the quarterbacks' cards, all the running backs' cards, and try to create boards that will replicate real statistical accuracy. But you can do it. It just takes a lot of work. And thankfully, we have computers, and that makes it a lot easier. I use a lot of Microsoft Excel to do my analyses, but it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm, for sure. It's interesting. I had written a letter to APBA, and I think I was writing something along those lines back in either the early 80s or the later 80s when I picked it up again, and you would get those like 10 and 11-yard losses from the running back, one of these really wild plays, it's just, so it is interesting. And now the other thing I wanted to talk about is your Super Bowl replays. You've been replaying after Canton, after our tournament in Canton. You and Greg brought the concept, brought the football to the actual convention in Alpharetta, and from what I saw from the newsletters, you've been doing Super Bowl replays with a group of coaches. So tell me a little bit about how that's evolved.
Yeah, it's actually, I give a lot of credit to John Herson, the president of the APBA Game Company, and in a way, I'm lucky because I live in Atlanta, so I can go up there. I see him, every couple months. We spend some time talking APBA football, because honestly, if you know John, he likes the football game better than the baseball game. So he really gets jazzed up talking about football. But he asked me if I would coordinate a Super Bowl pre-play, and he said, "You can pick out any of the coaches out there in the university you like, and we'll create cards." Now, again, when I say cards, they don't actually create the cards. They give us the file, and we have to, either print them out on paper. And so it's not the same as if you got the real card stock and all that, but we get cards and ratings. And so I have a hand selected group of really, really quality football gamers that we each give the opportunity to pre-play a Super Bowl. And then what we do is we publish the results as the games are played. We'll put a little write-up about the game along with the stats. And I remember one year, it was kind of interesting. We all finished our pre-plays, and after the real Super Bowl game, Mark Zarb, who's another extraordinary APBA football gamer, went through all of the different games that we had played as a group and averaged the amount of points for each team. And if you took the average for the team that won and the average it was the exact same score that the actual Super Bowl came out. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, it is interesting to go through that pre-play, and that's something that John Herson included me in, which I'm grateful for. And then I've picked out some great football minds around the country, some of them that I met through you. Jerry Zajac is one that I met up in Canton when you held your little conclave up there. And of course, Greg Wells and Greg Barath and Denny Hodge. And then I picked one of the guys that actually won the football tournament at the APBA convention, and Bob Corsair, and then Mark Garabedian, and then Roy Langens, and so there's a number of guys that we have actually brought in. Who am I missing here? Dick Moore and Doug Reese. And then I had two guys from my old league down in Tampa that agreed to play the game face to face. Ernie Charette and Chuck Halling actually agreed to do the Super Bowl game face to face, which I thought added an interesting twist to the solo experience that most of us have. So we've been doing it now for about 6 or 7 years, and it's great. We publish it on the boards. APBA Between the Lines, we'll put it on your Facebook page now that we've got an APBA Football Facebook page that we can publish those results on. And it just gets people kind of jazzed up about football again, which is something that I like.
For sure, for sure. That brings to mind something that's come up in terms of sample sizes. I want to do a video on, just a very quick video on some of the accuracy. One of the big issues to this day, to this minute, probably as long as the game lasts, is, well, what's more accurate, the basic boards, the master board, or the rules, the basic or master rules, the old boards or the new boards, or the mid-90s boards. I think people aren't still quite, aware of the evolution that, the kind of master results were averaged into that. But in terms of sample size and competitive, competition versus playing, what is an accurate sample size for you? You've got, roughly 10 coaches here, and you've talked about the average of the point total being right spot on. With proper usage of the game, I've always found that you can get uncannily close to the score. I just wonder if there's, in terms of developing the game as it goes forward, the new crops of cards in 1960, 61 seasons, 68 seasons, what in your mind is the accuracy of the game out of the box with the newer cards? I know we talked about some of the older cards, but still overall, gauge the accuracy over the course of the game's history, and if you can get that sample size out of one game.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to get to the right number, but I honestly believe that especially the game as it was back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s had these huge gains and huge losses. So you get to the right number, but you do it in a way that is a little skewed. I also don't like the touchdowns on the penalties, because you can have, really long runs from people that didn't have them. So what gamers do is they have to kind of, they have to dilute the results a little bit by either saying that, well, if that comes up, I'm going to limit it to whatever that player's long run was for the season. To me, that slows down the gaming experience. To me, it would be better served if the boards were more reflective of that, as opposed to having to come up with these kind of special rules. Most of the guys that play solo do some kind of variation off the master game, because I think a lot of them like the idea that you've got more plays to pick from, you've got different defenses. To me, that's a bigger challenge. Statistically, I don't think there's a lot of difference, but the master game certainly is designed for that face-to-face experience. Taking that face-to-face experience and trying to replicate it in a solo replay is a challenge. Greg Barath and Mark Zarb have done an extraordinary job of incorporating everything that the master game brings. I don't do that. And if you saw my game, I still have the old 4 plays: short pass, long pass, plunge play, and running play. I don't have a draw, I don't have a screen, I don't have a medium pass, but I've configured my boards to incorporate all those things, because I really do think that the screen pass, the draw play, those are really more strategic and meant for that face-to-face experience. I'm trying to get a very quick and easy replay done that is statistically accurate. So you ultimately get there, but everybody has a different approach. And these 8 or 9 guys that pre-play the Super Bowl, there's not 2 of us that do it the same way. It's very interesting.
Interesting. So you didn't set a ground rule, like we're all going to play this rule. Interesting.
The only ground rule we typically set was, if you remember a couple of years ago when New England was in the Super Bowl and Gronkowski was hurt and couldn't play, we all agreed not to play Gronkowski because he wasn't going to play in the real Super Bowl game. So outside of people that we know are injured, even though they might get a card in the card set, no, we don't have certain rules as far as how many times you can run somebody, who you have to start on defense, etc. And that's just kind of the way that we do it.
How do you handle, either personally or in a group like that, the idea that postseason stats are not reflected or hadn't been reflected, I don't think, in the cards? Now, I've seen that, in the past few years, John is doing this, like Paul Hornig, the 60 set, you've got his halfback card and his special teams card. I don't recall that they're doing a postseason card to reflect those kind of wild plays, but what's your take on incorporating the actual postseason, that James Harrison 99-yard touchdown run in 2008, Super Bowl 2009, something like that?
It's interesting because historically the game company has had a hit or miss approach to that. I remember, I don't know, it was probably back in the early 80s, Dave Williams, who was a kick returner for the Bears, didn't have a kickoff return for a touchdown during the regular season, but he had one in the playoffs and they put one on his card. So you just never know if the game company is going to reflect an extraordinary performance in a playoff game. Now, I don't think they'll do it for a running back. I mean, if a running back played in 14 games during the regular season, his card is only going to be reflective of that. But if you had a punt return, a kickoff return, an interception return, the game company historically has included a lot of those results in the card set. I don't know if they're completely consistent in that or if it's hit or miss, but I do know that that's something that we have seen. If a guy throws a halfback option pass and he didn't throw one during the season, I have no idea if that's reflected or not. I have to wait and see the cards to be able to identify whether or not they put that in there. But there is no real consistency with that. And I limit myself to playing with the cards, and my quota systems that I create are always based on the regular season, not the postseason. So if somebody does have that reflected on their card, that's great, but I don't count on it.
That would be something for the football handbook for sure. I think as we go through all those cards and see. Let's see now. One of the things, and we talked a bit about doing a forum of several coaches and going back to the innovations string that you have, the thread you have on between the lines here. There was something one of the many innovations that you had talked about is, and you alluded to it with the TD and penalty, is the false start penalty. I don't know if that was one of your originating things, but maybe could you walk through that quickly, the dilemma?
Yeah, it's interesting because the game out of the box, to get a false start or a delay of game or a encroachment penalty, You have to finish the play completely. And then you find out it was a false start. Well, in the NFL, if it's a false start, the ref blows the whistle, nothing happens. They mark off the 5-yard penalty and the offense goes back in the huddle. So when I created the matchup system, and the matchup system was a way to try to make individual players more valuable in the course of a game. It was in a face-to-face arrangement, but the original premise of the matchup was that on every play you would turn a card over and it would tell you whether there was a matchup on the play. And the matchup, if you were doing a plunge play, might be the offensive center against the middle linebacker. The theory was if I had Jay Hilgenberg at center, who was a 5 for the Bears, which I did, and I'm playing against a guy that's got a 2 or a 3 at middle linebacker, I'm going to win the majority of those matchups. It made it great for me because I purposely drafted a player who I knew would have a plungers card, Andre Franklin, who was a running back for the Dolphins. And I was able to actually take advantage of his plungers card and the fact that Jay Hilgenberg was a 5, and I had Dennis Hara, who was a 4. So I had a powerful inside line. And the matchup concept was born out of trying to make individual players more valuable. I wanted to make it so that if you had a chance to take a really good non-skilled player in the first round, that there was some incentive to do that. And by actually using individual matchups, it made a Lawrence Taylor more valuable to have because you knew he was going to be involved in matchups during the game. Well, after using matchups for a couple of years, I realized that, hey, we're doing this matchup card before we roll the dice. Why don't we just put the dead ball penalties on those matchup cards? So we did. We put the delay of game, we put the false start, and we put the encroachment penalty. So now you call a play, you turn the matchup card over, and play stops because it says false start. And you just mark off the penalty and you go. And it has been brilliant because you don't have to go through and roll dice, get the result, only to find out there was a false start on the play. So to me, the matchup system not only allowed you to have individual players take on a bigger role during the game, which in a face-to-face situation is huge. It also took care of that whole dead ball foul thing. And I like to take credit for it because I did invent it, but it was 2 years after I created matchups that I realized they could be used for dead ball penalties too. So it's kind of interesting how innovations evolve.
For sure. Yeah, well, that's it. You really have to work through the game. I mean, it's part of the charm of the game is that it offers that endless possibility from that not so simple game engine. I mean, it's simple, elegant, but there's a lot going on there vis-a-vis, the baseball evolving on a national pastime. I mean, APBA football is really the first truly unique APBA game, taking that 11-66, 1 out of 36 possibilities rule. So how many are, and it allows you to refine the game as you go on and find things, and print up any kind of card and any kind of variable you want. So that you've got 30 plays a quarter, and we know what the half plays are. 120 plays can be more than that with the half plays. So how many of these matchup cards do you have? Is it for every single play, half play, point after kick?
I have 168 matchup cards. There's 168. And when you turn now again, the matchup deck that I use now is for solo play because I can't find anybody in my area, the neighborhood that wants to play face to face, and that's fine. I think the majority of gamers today are playing solo, and so my goal is to try to create better ways that people can experience the solo game and enjoy it more. So my matchup deck that I have now is specifically designed for solo play. And what I do is I call all the offensive plays. So if I'm coaching both teams, I'm calling short pass to whoever, I'm going to pick the receiver, I'm going to pick the play. And then I'm going to turn over the top matchup card, and it's going to say, under short pass, whether it's a 4-3 or a 3-4 defense, it's going to give me the matchup. And the matchup might be receiver versus primary defender. So if it's a wide receiver, the 0-1 is matched up against the D9, and I'm going to compare their numerical ratings. And whoever has the advantage, I read that in a different column because it gives me a better result. If the offense has a favorable number, or if you have the defense has a favorable number, you read it in a different column where the defense has a more favorable result. So that's one thing. The dead ball fouls are on there. So obviously that makes it easy to navigate those. We also have other things that we use the matchup deck for, because each matchup card has a number from 1 to 168. And there are things that I use that for. And I'll give you one example, and it's kind of fun. Kickoffs that go into the end zone. Now, historically, you're coaching against somebody else. You receive a kick 6 yards deep in the end zone. You decide whether or not you're going to return it. Well, guess what? That's not a coach's decision. That's a player's decision on the field. So what I've done now is I've actually made that a decision on the field. And I have a chart that what you do is you look at the kick returner's kick return card and you look at the result on 66. And if it's a good result, he's got a higher likelihood that he's going to return the ball from the end zone. You turn the matchup card over and you look at the number. So if a guy's 8 yards deep in the end zone and he's got a 1, well, he's got about a 30% chance that he's going to run it out. Well, you get nervous as a coach thinking, what if he doesn't go 8 yards? But so my point is, but if the guy's got a 17, he's only got like a 3% chance he's going to return one. So my point is, I was able to take that decision out of the hands of the coach because it's not a coach's decision. And I was able to use those random numbers on the matchup card to be able to do that. So I'm always trying to innovate by using what I've got to try to make the gaming experience better. And so if it's not a coach's decision, then I'm not going to make a decision. I'm going to let some random element decide for me. That the matchup deck helps me with that.
How much do you play test your innovations, and when are you kind of satisfied that they're ready for prime time?
So because I do the solo experience, when I come up with a new innovation, I always play a tournament every year. I use all 32 teams and we play a double elimination tournament. So I end up playing about 60 games, and it's great. I can do that in 6 months, and it's one I use every player in the card set. I pay for the card set. I want to use all the teams. And as I'm going through and playing with a new innovation, I will know after about 5 or 6 games if it needs to be tweaked. Sometimes what I come up with works right out of the gate, but not all the time. Sometimes I come up with what I think is a brilliant idea, and then I find out it doesn't work as well as I thought it should. But it gives me the opportunity to tweak it because I'm not impacting anybody else. And then after I'm convinced that it works and that it's shareable, then I will go ahead and share it on the innovation thread.
Gotcha. Awesome. Wonder if we
And I will say this too, the innovation thread has gotten people to come back to me with their ideas that have been pretty good. And I've been able to integrate some of their ideas into my own experience. So.
Well, and that's what kind of I'd like to do these forums where, and as you suggested, that we're going to do have 4 coaches, and I'd like to see it where we do, because obviously, I mean, your thread is up to about 200 responses or more now, and it's not necessarily all, an innovation, but you could talk about a single innovation. It reminds me of I think it was on America's Game when John Madden was one of the Raiders Super Bowls, maybe 76 Raiders, and he was talking about going to see Vince Lombardi talk about coaching, and he ended up, Lombardi talked about the sweep play all day long in the seminar, I think. So you could talk about one of these innovations for hours, the calculation, but it would be great if we could get some of your coaches, maybe from the Super Bowl or from the thread, and do, give someone 10 minutes to present an innovative idea, and then the rest of us kind of chime in, not me because I just moderate and stay out of the way, but if that's something that you think we could pull together, that would be awesome.
Oh, I think that there were people that will line up to participate in something like that. I know you haven't been able to make it to one of the conventions in Alpharetta. We hope that changes someday. But I host an innovation lab at the convention every year. Now, the innovation lab is 50% baseball and 50% football. And part of it is I just talk about stuff that I've done, but I love it when I can get somebody else up there to talk about things that they've done, get feedback from the audience, and everybody benefits from that kind of a dialogue. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. In the time we have left here, as I know you have some appointments here, but I wonder if we could go back a little bit to your history with the APBA Journal, working with Howard, working with the folks then, and that kind of era, that second wave of the APBA Journal, and maybe the shift away from the mail-in leagues to early digital gaming and things like that.
All I can tell you is thank God for the APBA Journal. It was the thing that truly connected the community. And, the journal started, it was a great way for people to share ideas. It was a great way to view somebody's replays, questions and answers. But the thing about the journal that made it special was if somebody wrote an article for the journal would publish their name and address so that when I went to Florida, when I moved to Florida, I was able to connect with a guy named Ernie Charette, who was in a couple of male baseball leagues, because I had his address. I was able to look up his phone number, and the two of us actually started the Suncoast Football League together. Had it not been for the journal, I would never have known how to reach out and get a hold of him. The journal was what fostered the first convention. The first convention in Philadelphia I didn't go to, but I went to the second one in New York City in 1975. And you start to think about there's other people who are crazy enough to play this game, but they were playing it at such a high level. It was truly remarkable to be a part of that community. I wrote a letter to the APBA Journal about the football article that Mike Haley had written. I did not know that Mike Haley lived in Rochester, New York, where I lived. And when I wrote this letter to him, the journal forwarded to him, and then I got a phone call from him that says, I'm right here. He lived about 15 minutes from where I live, and he had a football league, and he asked me if I would join because they had an opening. That's how I got introduced to face-to-face football leagues, and that was kind of the basis of how I set up my league in Florida when I went down there, which is now in their 42nd year of existence. So it is... Were it not for the journal, the APBA community would not have been able to develop as well as it did. Now today it's different because you've got all sorts of online access, but we didn't have that back then. The journal was our lifeline, and it was remarkable. And the people that I met early on are still friends of mine today, and that's kind of cool. So, and then when Howard asked me. When Mike Haley decided he was done writing for the journal, Howard knew about my football league and asked me if I would write football articles for the journal, which I did, and I was very happy to do that. And it was truly a labor of love during that. And Howard was a football guy. Don't misunderstand it. He dabbled in baseball, but he was part of a football league that Greg Wells was involved in. And he loved football as part, because, the APBA Journal, when it first started, I don't think the first football article even showed up for about 2 years. It was all about baseball. And so the football presence is now, with Greg Barath and his website and all the people that chime in on the APBA Between the Lines, football is now not considered the minor sport at APBA anymore. It's right up there. I'm very happy to be part of that.
For sure. Well, and with all the seasons that John's been releasing, I mean, that's, testament to kind of making up for, we're a small but mighty crowd, the APBA footballers.
That's true.
Now, you mentioned Atlanta, the conference is coming up. Do you have anything planned, loose sketch of some topics you'd like to address down there this year?
So, it'll kind of depend. When we do the innovation lab, what I'm hoping that enough of the football guys will show up that I can do a roundtable. Mm-hmm. I would really like to do a roundtable similar to what you and I have talked about doing, kind of on this platform, but to do one in person where who I can get some chairs and I can put Greg Barath and Mark Zarb and Denny Hodge and some people up on the stage where the audience can just ask them questions. How do you treat this? What do you do for this? I want to build more interest in the football game. My role will be to moderate, similar as to what you're saying. I can talk about my own innovations forever, but at some point, I want to get more people involved. I want to find out what other people are doing to enhance their gaming experience. So yes, I will probably present one or two of my ideas, but then I really would like to have it opened up to more of a group discussion. And I'm thinking, and I'm going to talk to John Herson about this, I'm thinking that I want to do 2 innovation labs. one on football and one on baseball, because I do play a lot of the baseball game as well. But I really do think that if somebody doesn't play football and they're sitting in the audience trying to listen to football innovations, it's not going to be that meaningful to them. So by offering two different sessions, I think you're going to pull in people that it's going to resonate with more.
You know, one also, and I don't know that if it's been going back to the whole basic master thing and that entry point. You know, I've been playing guitar my whole life, and I run a guitar channel as well. And I feel it's a similar situation. You see all these incredible players online, and I feel like it's a daunting thing. And I feel it's almost like the same thing with APBA football, that you hear about all these tremendous, you know, the master game. What is this mystery? These things compatible. And a lot of folks, I think, not only because the game, you know, it does take some time to play, but that's part of the thing to me, is that if, especially for solitaire, which is why I think it is as just as good a game, even without the innovations, I'll put that out there. But, you know, if there is a way to demo people, just the most basic, I think I'll do a video on this, just a very basic, play the game out of the box, just call the defense. Don't even worry about +2, -2, +4, -4, all that kind of stuff. I think it would be great to get people to understand that the football game can be fairly easy to play and enjoyable and accurate if you use it. You know, if you do that little bit of prep work, just as you would do with baseball, you know, set up your lineup, your batting sequence, et cetera, and your starting pitchers and all. If you use the team as intended, you know, if it's a 60-40 run pass team versus a 55-45 pass run team, now it's, you know, 70-30 pass run, you know, something like that. But if you use it correctly, I think that's, you know, a demo that might be interesting. I don't know if that makes sense.
It would be, but there are some unique challenges to that concept, because if you play, now you can use the defensive play cards. The game company has come up with defensive play cards, which are so much better than, if you remember back in the 60s and 70s, you know, solo play, I don't know what it was, the rules were just awful. So that is better. And so one of the things that we do at the convention that John asks us to do is we will demo the game. So I'll play a game where I'm just using the defensive play cards. And Greg Barath will play a game where he's using all of his bells and whistles. And if somebody wants to sit down and watch him, if they have a question, he'll stop and he'll answer the question. I'll do the same thing. So we do try to do those during the course of the convention, so that if people have an interest in wanting to know, well, how do these defensive play cards work, I can show them. And then I'll also demo my system, because if they want to use my system, at least they've seen it in action. And then I'll actually have them sit down and play and call a few plays and use my system, or call a few plays and use the game company's defensive play cards. Because there's no better education than sitting down and doing it. But I will tell you that the other challenges that the game company has is not, the game company can't fix everything. It's the same with any of their games. You can overuse good players. And we've had that situation happen at the convention during the football tournament, where we didn't put quotas in, and some guy had a backup running back that had a monster card, and he ran him like 32 times in the game. So now we have to give quotas, and we have, and people like Greg Barath don't like the quotas because they're not going to abuse, but
right.
You know, but so it does become a challenge when you're doing a tournament, especially with football. But we still will have a football tournament at the convention, and we use the basic game. Mm-hmm. We only play one half. We start the game at 10-10 at halftime. We only play one half, because otherwise the games would take too long. And I don't mind if I'm playing solo or if I'm actually playing a game against somebody. I like the fact that it's 3 hours. It's 3 hours to me that are a lot of fun. But if you've got to play 3 or 4 or 5 games in a tournament, you just can't do it at the convention. So we make an accommodation there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, you know, everyone get your tickets, get ready to get down there. September, I believe, right?
It's August.
It's August. Okay, I'm getting
August, yeah.
everyone's kind of getting their planning opening here, so that's great. Everything's opening up. So, well, thank you, Ray, as always. It's great to connect with you again. We're going to be doing this a lot more, I hope. And anytime you've got an innovation you'd like to show off, I mean, we're here to kind of give you the platform, additional platform to all the other platforms that now exist. It's the mastermind of the game is, you're looking at him right here, Mr. Dunlap. Thank you so much, sir.
Greg, it was great talking to you, and I won't be a stranger, I promise.
All right, take care.
All right, thanks.
You got it.